All right, welcome everybody to the October TUG event for Florida, the Florida Tableau user group. We used to be the Orlando user group, and then we just expanded out when COVID hit and there wasn't a lot of activity in other cities. So we kind of grouped them all together so that we could all continue to meet up. My name is Aaron. On the line here, we also have Erica, Katie's here, Yamil Medina, Jeffrey Baker, and Andrew Kim. They will be here probably at some point through this presentation. Just a couple of bullet points of our promise of doing monthly events. We've been doing it for the last 2 or 3 years, having new speakers. Ray here is from Pennsylvania, so see what things are going on up there. Networking, we try to do an in-person networking event just here in Orlando every quarter. We try to get back to the community as best we can, provide that platform for you guys to share and for feedback. Try to share job opportunities as well and inspire career growth. We had one person that had submitted a job posting for their company, but I could not find a link to it. So I don't have that for today. You can connect with us on LinkedIn. We have both the Orlando and the Florida Tableau user groups. The email, anybody who RSVP should have gotten an email from me asking if you had any job opportunities. That's the email that it came from. Twitter, we have our own Twitter handle and a couple of hashtags you can follow us with. The TUG event page is just the standard, type in Tableau user group Orlando. That's where everything is hosted. And we also have a Slack channel if anybody wants to connect there. Well, we will be giving away some swag, but you have to stay until the end to be eligible. We get people who just register and they're like, sweet, I want some swag, which isn't fair to anybody who stayed and watched the whole presentation. So towards the end, I'll get a screen grab of all the people that are still here, and we'll draw that and contact you if you've won after the meeting is over. Right now we have upcoming speakers, Jared Penrod from Playfair Data, talk about Figma wireframing. December, we have a TBD in person here in Orlando, trying to do like a year-end thing. We do have somebody lined up, just trying to confirm with that. And then January, Katrina Johnson from Pi Data. Not sure how you say that, but she's going to go over building pivot tables in Tableau. Here's today's speaker, Ray Givler. Ray's a senior consultant at Helion. Is that right?
Yeah, Helion is the division of Highmark. Yep, that I work for.
All right, so he's going to go over his IronViz journey and show us some neat things, some things that I know I've not seen yet, and with all the different things you can do out there as far as IronViz. We've seen some of those at the conference, it's just crazy. So I'm looking forward to this, Ray. I'll go ahead and hand the screen over to you.
Awesome. So thank you for inviting me, Florida group, and for the chance to speak here. I'm going to share my entire screen, and I'm going to be flipping back and forth between multiple apps here, between PowerPoint and the online version of last year's IronViz submission by me, as well as desktop, Tableau public desktop, and Zoom. So it'll be a bit of jumping, hopefully not too disorienting. And I know, Aaron, you guys are really good at keeping track of the chat. So
yep,
my IronViz journey. So the theme here, subtext, subtitle, if at first you don't succeed, at least you learn something. That's kind of what happened to me. So what I'm going to cover is kind of the submission context. What was I thinking about? Why did I do it? Give you a guided tour of my last year's submission. Then cover some tactical lessons learned, and by that I mean what I learned specifically in Tableau, like how-to stuff. And then lastly, strategic lessons, more like what was going on around the contest and how I approached it and things like that. So let's get right into it. What is IronViz? For anyone who is not familiar, this is Tableau's annual global data visualization contest. Last year was the first time that I competed in it. The main criteria that they judge by are analysis, design, and storytelling. And this year's contest moved up to October. It is occurring right now. Maybe you can put a link in the chat for it, Aaron. So it was announced on the 3rd. Submissions, I think, have to be in by the 31st midnight. I'm not sure what midnight, what time, maybe Eastern time, Greenwich time. I'm not sure. Anyway, you can find out more about it there. There's usually hundreds of entries. It's very competitive because you are going up against everybody in the world. So it's a fun time. You know, get your ideas, try to make them happen in Tableau. So if you see my LinkedIn profile, and please, anyone interested, please connect with me out there. One of the things I bill myself as is the Tableau Pragmatist. So if I'm being pragmatic, like just doing business dashboards, why would I even compete in this? I was thinking for a while, like, what's the point? I'm never going to make a fancy infographic at work. Should I even do it? And then I was saying, oh yeah, I could do it if I tried. So then I decided to like put my effort where my mouth was and really try to do it and see if I could make a competitive dashboard for IronViz. So that's kind of why I did it. The time commitment, I put an insane amount of time in this because I don't work in infographics. I'm not used to doing this sort of stuff, except I did one other minor one in like a contest for the Blue Cross Blue Shield Associates in the US. The Tableau users amongst them had a small competition. That's the only time I ever really did another infographic. So I don't really, you know, have that much experience in churning stuff out quickly or even the design of everything. So there were some efforts there, and I had a little health issue in the middle of that month that lost some time. But I want to be honest, I put an insane amount of time into it. I worked on it every weekend, other than that health thing, every weekend and every evening for the whole month, and I worked like 60 hours on it. So it's kind of crazy. I'm not saying you have to. It reminds me of that speaker you guys had a few months ago, Erica and Aaron, who does infographics all the time. The guy, I think he was from England, and he said he can do one in like 16 hours. So there you go. If you're good at it, you can do it in a quarter of the time it took me. Just something to consider. So the idea for it, like, where did it even come from? It's Star Wars quotes. So I am old enough, and we'll cover this in a minute, to have seen the original Star Wars in the theater when I was a kid. And I love the original trilogy, and I kind of still always quote the movies under certain circumstances or scenarios where something's happening in life and it reminds me of the movie quote, and I'll just blurt it out. And it's just kind of something I do. I know a lot of kind of data nerd folks. I know other guys that do this as well. I'm just throwing that out there. Maybe we're all neurodivergent. I don't know, but that's kind of where it came from. The data that I got from it are from 3 main places. One, I have a list of my own like top Star Wars quotes. That's in one data set. And then I got some from an imdb.com poll about favorite Star Wars quotes. And then lastly, there was a prior Tableau Public Viz that had, oh, this was awesome, all the dialogue from the original trilogy in a data set. So that was super, super helpful, because I couldn't find exactly what I wanted elsewhere. So I just exported that from that Tableau Public workbook and then imported it into mine. So as far as like the approach to the story and analysis in the dashboard, I had no master plan. I just started throwing stuff on the screen, and we'll talk more about that later and why that might not have been the best approach. So my initial plan, there wasn't a lot in it. It was dark seemed to do well in IronViz. So I made a space starfield background that I got from a NASA image. So I don't forget, that actually wasn't as dark as I wanted it. And there were some other things. So I really fooled around even with the background image and filled it in with a lot of black to make it darker. It was more like a grayish, and the stars, they had those large kind of crosshair. I don't even know what you call them, effects that you get from the Hubble telescope. So I kind of diminished some of those too. So there was some even background editing. I also noticed the long format, long vertically does well. So I knew I wanted to do that. And I wanted to make it so that you really could interact with the dashboard. So those were my design kind of high level thoughts going into it. And let's just hold on one second. I'm going to stop my own video for a while because it's distracting me. All right. Let's go over and look at the dashboard here on Tableau Public. So here it is, personal and public favorite quotes from Star Wars. And I grabbed that Star Wars image right off the official scroll of the first movie. And I know it's called Star Wars New Hope. When I saw the movie in 1977, it did not say A New Hope. So I'm a purist and I refuse to accept that as the name of what is actually considered episode 4 now. So anyway, be that as it may. George Lucas said that the whole story is kind of told through the eyes of R2-D2 and C-3PO. So I thought that was be a good tie into this dashboard. So they're up here, top left is the first real content. And this little prompt here, click on us to start your journey. I got that idea from Tableau Reviewer, and I'll talk more about that in a bit. So each one of these little images here that I'm hovering over is a show hide button with an image as the button. So what I did here, this is kind of a famous scene, and it's actually one of the quotes here as well, where R2-D2 projects the image of a message from Princess Leia. So it's kind of a nod to that, and as is the text at the top here, a long time ago in a cinema far, far away, a 9-year-old boy, myself, saw the Star Wars thing. So the general layout of this dashboard explains it here. There is a design progression, and the quotes progress from top to bottom in the visualization, roughly in chronological order of the original trilogy. And each one is in an encircled a quote. The analysis kind of progresses from the individual quotes and then aggregation by episode, and then finally by alliance. And I mean dark side versus good side. So there is almost a story and a subplot, in how this visualization progresses. And there are details in here too that you might not notice. So I decided to write about those here. That the red and the blue for the dark side, and the good side are from the lightsabers. I picked those colors right off of Darth Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi's lightsabers. The quote pop-ups, which I'll show you in a minute, are supposed to be reminiscent of the translucent war room displays of the rebellion that were on the ice planet Hoth. I actually used the wrong image, the wrong color. I got it from one of the subsequent movies where they had a similar display. I think it was Rogue One. So that's actually a mistake in here. There are location buttons, like down here we have Tatooine. When we click on it, you'll see that it displays the X-Wing dashboard with the information in the middle, and that's supposed to give you the perception that you're flying around the galaxy, and this is your readout of the thing you're looking at. And those locations are where the quote took place. The font here is something called U Gothic, which is the closest to that using the Star Wars text scroll. And oh yeah, and I already mentioned the last point. So that's it. Let's get further into it and look at the top level results here. Along the left-hand side, we have a little indicator for my personal, if one of the top 12 quotes from the IMDb poll, which actually I think had like 35 total favorites from the chronologically first 6 movies. If they were also in my top 12, there's a little indicator on the left. That really doesn't do anything. However, if you click on any one of these other quotes, let's go with Yoda here, try not to or do not. You get a little pop-up that says who said that, what episode it was in, what's its overall rank here, and how many people voted in the IMDb poll. So you can click it again to turn that off. And I really don't, I'll cover it later. I don't like how this turns white, and I could have done that in a better way, and I'll show you that later. So only 3 of my personal favorites are among the top favorites from other people. So I'm going to show you here, click the characters for a quote. And so this color here is what I'm talking about as a heads up display. So for each quote, I have what they said, who said it, what episode, where were they, the context of the story, kind of the emotion that goes along with it, and the use case. And the use case is like, when may I say this? You know, what life circumstances. And then actually on each quote I have at the bottom, this is in Arabic. That same quote is in the Star Wars Galactic script. And if you click on any of these images, which I'm not going to do, that will take you out to I think one of them's broken out, a YouTube clip of that same scene where they say the quote that is indicated. So we can close these again to close the quote. Let's look at Tatooine for a second. Again, this is the heads up display of an X-Wing fighter pulled from a screenshot of the movie. These buttons don't do anything over here. It gives you a little thing, you know, what is this planet? What's the description and where I took it from. I called it a hyperspace link just to be fun instead of hyperlink. Close that out. Going down again to invite interaction with this, I put in this little thing where you could put a quote from the movie, like if you remembered something that was said and you want to know what movie it appeared in, you could put that here. It's defaulting to this quote from Yoda, mind what you have learned, save you it can. And that was kind of with the theme of you will learn if you participate in IronViz. So that's why I chose that one. But, you know, if you don't know any quotes, there's a little prompt at the bottom. You can put in a character name or something here. Say we said Jabba for Jabba the Hutt. If you don't know Jabba, I don't know, try something else. Han would work well. And you can see every time he was mentioned in the dialogue. And actually, one of the hardest things here was the text. Well, it wasn't that hard, but text calculations. So there's like 3 of them. There's the portion of the text before the parameter that you entered. There's the text that matches the parameter itself. And then there's the text subsequent to the parameter that you entered, all kind of then concatenated and put in that line variable. Let's look at the X-Wing over here for a second. Just one, this is technically a map behind the scenes. And, oh no, I actually wanted to talk about the quotes. Let's look at this one. Red 5 standing by. This I will show you later is actually an annotation over top of a graph. Okay. And this same like graph approach is used in multiple places. So it's just like a copy and a reworking of that quote finder graph. So it's kind of subtlety here. These 3 lines are the same 3 movies, and this target is where in the 3 movies this quote occurred on the timeline. So it's kind of just almost an Easter egg type thing, you know, kind of behind the scenes. So it was on the first movie, you know, whatever, about 80% of the way through, Luke says Red 5 standing by. I'm going to take a quick look at the chat. All right. Looks like no questions on that. So going on down, so everyone knows, may the force be with you. Why isn't that on my top 12 list? And I figured I had to address that. So I put that in here. And it's because 3 separate characters say the same thing in 2 different episodes. And then there's other variants of that. So just a little background, you can see some other versions of that and where that occurred in the movie. So you may want to know who is moving on and kind of going in a broader context, who is the most quotable character. So what we had here is from the poll, I put the total number of votes each character got for, you know, favorites. But the thing is, the characters do not speak the same amount. So this applies a lot in analytics, right? Where you really need to normalize your data. So we see like, and the good guys tend to speak a lot more than the bad guys. So when we normalize, we see in the 3rd column here, what's interesting is that it's a tie for first place is most quotable, because Admiral Akbar, and he is like the catfish looking guy in the rebellion, who says it's a trap. That's kind of his famous thing. He has one voted line out of 14, and Vader has 10 out of 140. Kind of neat that they come out exactly the same. So my next question was, we're bumping up to the episode level here. Like, does the rating correlate with the number of favorite quotes? And it kind of does. You know, both Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb have these rated in the same order, with Jedi being significantly less in the actual score. I could have put the ratings here as well, but the quotes, Empire Strikes Back is number one, not quite as many favorite quotes per line of dialogue as Star Wars, but similar. And so I questioned down here, you know, in the analysis below each graph, my analysis here. So do good stories yield good quotes or vice versa? Is there a third factor, correlation or causation? The debate rages across the galaxy. So trying to be a little entertaining in the content as well here. So this next chart, we're going like, do the quotes cluster around certain story positions? And I forget who suggested doing this. I originally had like just Tableau native clustering here. And someone suggested that I do it by film. And I liked that idea. So I went ahead and did it. And I custom made each of these icons. And basically all my icons here I made in Snagit. So I love Snagit. I have it at work. I bought it at home. I like it so much. So I made these icons. And if you're not a fan of the movie, this rectangular one is supposed to be Han Solo frozen in carbonite. And these are teddy bear looking ones are supposed to be Ewoks. And the other thing is the Death Star. So the legend is up here. You can click on those for legend highlighting. And I will talk about that more later as well. So ultimately, we roll down to, is the dark side stronger? Quote-wise. And I'm trying to pull everything together with quotes. So that question itself is a quote from Luke Skywalker in Empire Strikes Back. And so the dark side is stronger, but if you're a fan of the movies, you know, at the end of the Return of the Jedi, there's a deathbed conversion of Vader and he turns to the good side. So like, what if he was on the good side? Well, then if you count him as that, then it reverses and the good side has the most quotes. So I say here that just like Obi-Wan Kenobi says in Return of the Jedi, many of the truths we cling to depend greatly on our own point of view. And we know that's true in data and analytics as well. Then finally, I thought it would be cool to put some credits in here and data sources. So I used, this is the, if you remember the first movie where they get the schematic of the Death Star and they figure out how to attack it. I used that image for this button. So you click on that and I thank the people who gave me feedback and I give the data sources. And there's a picture of me with my lightsaber from Disney. And a Tableau hoodie. So there you go. Excuse me. So any questions about, you know, kind of the purpose of this or how I designed it before I get into some more like nitty gritty how-to?
Doesn't look like any questions in the chat. I've got questions, but I'll wait till you get into it.
Okay. So let me check my PowerPoint here. So, all right, let's get into the lessons learned. So one thing to remember, and this is the first one has been fixed. There's this little tip out there from one of the, I think maybe 2 years ago, speed tips from the Tableau conference, how to make quick and easy rounded bars. I wanted to use rounded bars in that very first chart, but they were not rendering the way I wanted. You can see how the circles looked a little strange here, overlapping with the bars. And text that was all one line when it was on server was split to 2 lines. And I think my final submission had that, and I didn't notice it. So, you know, always check. And you know this from, if you have Tableau server at work as well, it always renders slightly different. It's different technology. There's nothing you can do, but so be sure to check continuously about that. Resizing your dashboard is the formatting kiss of death if you have many floating objects. So, excuse me, where this comes from is that before I had it reviewed, or during the one review, it was suggested that I add a lot more white space or space in my situation. And I went from like, I think I had it like 1500 by 3500, and then I went to 5000. And when you change it like that, like every object changes size and its position changes, and there's a lot of assumptions made about what you want. I really wish it were rather like a prompt, like, do you want to resize everything? So that was a bit of rework there. With all these floating buttons that I have, excuse me, show hide buttons, it can get messy if you place something after the content you're trying to show, and then it'll display in front of it. So if you can work back to front, you can avoid some rework and refloating things to the front. I did so much refloating. There was quite a bit of it. Another thing I did is colored containers rather than the multiple sheets within the container, and I used opacity to dim. So let's go over and look at it in desktop here. So if let's go double click that, let's get out to the container. So main favorites, right? So I always rename dashboard containers as well, so I can keep track of what is happening. If you don't know about that, right click, last thing, rename it. You can see it's 50% grayed out here, and that's to dim the stars so that you can read the text. So I did that in all of them. The trade-off in doing it in one place is I wanted this golden text for everything, so I'm trying to limit the color, right? So it's almost everything is just the gold, blue, or red, right? If I go to the sheet though, and I'm not coloring the sheet, it's gold on white background, which makes it hard to work with. So I don't know, maybe that wasn't the best choice, but that's how I decided to move forward with it. Okay. And I knew this one, but I don't really use it that much. G for grid lines. So so if I hit G here, I got grid lines on the whole dashboard. And when I really used it here is I wanted to make sure after I made this 5,000 pixels long that I had the space between the analysis and the next chart or title, right, to be approximately the same, because I can't really see them all at once. So that's useful if you didn't know that. G for grid lines. The view show cards button, I had accidentally closing cards, which I only do very rarely, and it's something that I always I forgot that this thing was even up here. I don't know if this was always up here, the show cards button, but there's also other ways you can do it. So if you're over on a worksheet, right, if you right click in any gray area like down here, you get that same list. And even the gray area between this, right, you got the same list. So ways to bring your cards back on if you accidentally close a marks card or something. Now I'm going to talk about turning off selection highlighting. So if anyone wants this deck, just reach out to me and I'll send it to you. I have links to these to articles about how to do this. Basically in a graph, in Tableau, when you select one bar, right, all the other bars turn a lighter shade, right? They're dimmed out a little bit. And I really didn't like the way that looked in that top 12 quotes graph. So what you can do, let's go right back to it, is you can create a variable. So this dummy to stop highlighting, and then you create a dashboard action, right? Did I name it stop highlighting? Well, that's good. So from that graph to selected fields, stop dummy highlighting. Actually, this is another thing that I learned here. I think source sheets. It's only supposed to be from this quote thing, but this is another learning because I just added one sheet to the working version of this. Oh, I'm confusing myself here. I thought two things were checked there. Oh, target sheet. I'm sorry, target sheets. So I really only want IMDb poll, and this is the point I was trying to make just 30 seconds ago. If you have a dashboard action and you add a sheet to your dashboard, that new sheet, which I just add here, is automatically added to the action. You got to get in there and unselect it. It just assumes that you want it to apply to every new sheet. So I'm going to update that here. But anyway, the point is to stop that highlighting, you make a dummy field and you make a highlight action to highlight that dummy field, which you don't even display on your sheet, and then it goes away. The other thing I did here is, if you notice out on the check-in time here, out on the public version, right? When I click this, it turns kind of a white, and that's kind of hard to see. So if I had to do it over, I added another set action here. And at least I think I saved it. So if I click now, it just goes black. I think that looks a little better. I don't know why it loses the border on the left-hand side. I fooled around with a lot to try to fix that. So if anyone fixes that and figures it out, send it to me. I'd love to know how to stop that. But that was through a set action. So that was a lot of details about one point, but hopefully it was interesting and informative. All right, what are we here? I had turned off field labels per row. I kind of don't even like the name that, field labels per row. I would have it like row headers or something. So I have a post about, you know, why I think they should be called headers and these naming should be reversed. But if you need to do it, analysis, Tableau, or table layout, show field labels per for rows. But I ended up not using that graph, so I can't even really show you that. But so what I'm talking about is just, you know, if you have a few columns of rows, the label of what your dimension is at the top, you know, of the graph, whether you want to show that or not, how to re-show it. That's what that point is. Next lesson is actually these quotes, and I talked about it a little bit earlier. I actually am annotating using an annotate area for the text over a graph. Let's look at one real quick here. Let's just take this and this, and let's go to the sheet. So this, right, that is an annotation. And I have all the fields displayed in that, and I just have them up here in the lower left, and I have a separate worksheet for each one of these things. You know, if I had more time, maybe I would have made it neater with some sort of like filtering action on each sheet based on something else, but that's how I set it up. So it's a way to put text over a graph if you have an occasion to do that. More tactical lessons learned. Let's go right back to that one, right? So, I talked about this a little bit before. Remember, this is where this quote occurred, and it was in the first movie. So see the movie number, it's just 1, 2, 3. That's the first line, right? And then I have what looks like a target. And all I did is the quote position, which is like the number of minutes into the movie, I believe. Duplicated it twice, right? And then each one of those, so I have size there, I have size there. Each one of these, I think I put, no, wait a minute. Now I'm confusing myself. Oh yeah, measure. Okay, that's it. Measure names. Measure names is on size, and I'm not showing this thing. But that's what caused it. And each of these is a different size. Anyhow, that's how I made the target. 3 different variables, 3 different sizes, and measure names on the size control. Another thing I don't do a lot of work is constant reference lines. So I use those as the labels in like the quote finder. So if we go back over there, so the Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. So we would have to, let's see, columns, show header. Well, I'm sorry. So these should be, yeah, reference lines. So there's a reference line for each one, right? That's all it is, a constant with a label slapped on there. Another thing I did is get a better handle of how colors actually work in Tableau. Like I've used this thing to get the color I want, but I never really thought much about how these three different controls work in the color picker. So the one across the top gives you the hue, which is really your color of the rainbow. The up and down is the value, which is a measure of how light or dark your color is, with black being 0, and saturation is the intensity of the color, with 0 being gray at the bottom. So it's those 3 dimensions, right? Set your color, and then once you make a custom color, you can just drag it from right there to this custom color list to reuse it. So relatedly, I wanted to make these colors, you know, true to the movie and make them exact. But one thing I learned is there is no exact color. So what I had done is selected the gold from off the Star Wars image, and I made the text out, and somehow I lost the value for it. And I tried to select it again, and it was different. Well, that's coming off some old film, right? Probably not digital. So they vary slightly. And then if you're trying to pick a color off a lightsaber, even in the movie, they come out kind of like my photograph did here, where it's like white in the center and then blue, and yet so you have a continuum anyway. So there is no one correct right answer is the lesson learned. Just pick one that looks good and stick with it. Whoops. Legend highlighting. I swear this used to be the default that the legend was highlighting, and now it's not, and you have to turn it on. But like I mentioned before, that is active over on the graph where I am showing the clustering of quotes in the movie. So again, you can click those and highlight just the matching item. Something I don't use a lot at work, but I wanted to here is preventing interaction by using a blank over worksheets. So it says in the quote section. So down here, right? So if you see, I highlight that is one big blank object to prevent people from interacting with the things under it. It's kind of an old tip, but useful. Oh, this is an interesting one. Sheet related to object placement. So if you have a sheet and you want to place an object, and this happened to me on this legend highlighter, right? So let's say that we take the legend off, right? And rather than, and I do some other stuff and I don't want to undo all the work I did, and then I want to re-add the legend, right? And I want to go to legends and my shape legend. And I add that. The question is, where was it added? Right? Where was it added? Let's see if it's consistent from the last time. Oh, yes, it is. It's up here. So I believe, and I don't have any evidence for this, I believe Tableau will add it to the forwardmost container that exists in the dashboard. But I'm not sure that's exactly right. So here it is. And it's not really useful there. So I'm just going to undo twice and get it back on. But it's something to keep in mind, that if you suddenly add a legend or a filter based on one graph to a dashboard with many objects, you won't necessarily know where it's going to appear. Whoops. Headers for a single measure. You can drag measure names to columns. I ended up not using that. And that kind of goes into a theme that, excuse me, I had a lot of rework, and there were ideas I tried. I would say like probably 50% of things I tried, I abandoned. So if you are not a regular infographics person, you expect to throw away a lot of ideas. Here's one that drove me kind of crazy. This is a dark side stronger. Oh my gosh. I could not figure out why these were rendering slightly differently. These three bar graphs. One of them, the bars were like slightly smaller than the other. And I kept looking and looking and looking and looking at them. And finally, I noticed that on one of them, I had the mark type set to automatic, right? And the other two were set to bar. And then when I set the automatic one explicitly to bar, they were all sized the same. I don't know how to remember that point, but it would be worth remembering because you could put some time into that. So that is the end of like tactical, how I did stuff in Tableau. Any questions on that before I go into more like strategic lessons learned?
Hey, Ray, I've always struggled with doing backgrounds on my dashboards. Can you show me just real quick how you set that up on yours?
That is a good question. Let's see if I can remember it. In here, dashboard. Because like I never do this at work. I did it once for this. I don't even know if I can remember. Is it
It might be under map.
It might be under maps, background maps,
No.
manage maps. I'm sorry, I cannot remember.
That's okay. You just email me sometime. Let me know how you did that.
Okay,
It always seems to be way harder than you'd think it should be.
Yeah, I think this is something that I've done like twice, so I just can't remember how to do it.
No worries.
That is, it's not just on that. I mean, there's stuff that I do a lot more frequently than that I don't remember. I have a massive amount of notes for Tableau at work that I refer back to a lot. All right, for strategic lessons learned for IronViz, one thing I would recommend is familiarize yourself with recent winners, and they're all out there. And don't create derivative work. Derivative work meaning something that looks a lot like a prior effort. I don't think that will help your chances. Don't use proprietary images. There is a warning against that, and I did that obviously a lot in my thing, and I don't know if it got me disqualified. I suspect it probably did. Who knows? I really didn't get any feedback on the dashboard. Check your data. This is an important, like, this is embarrassing. Like, after it was done, there was an error in imdb.com, their poll, and they had one of the quotes misattributed in the wrong movie, right? So trust but verify. And I mentioned this earlier, expect to try and discard a lot of ideas, get continuous feedback from multiple sources, and expect a lot of rework after expert feedback. So moving on, I have a link in this to past winners gallery, and you'll notice, look at this, Star Wars screen time analysis, 2017 top 10. Looks pretty familiar, huh? So like, I don't know if that was in my subconscious and maybe I saw it and designed it, but yeah, kind of embarrassingly similar when I look at it. More on strategy, the expert feedback. I don't know if Sarah Bartlett is doing it for this year's program, but the prior 2 years, she ran a feedback program with expert volunteers, and I was paired with Sam Parsons, who was a 2021 finalist. I mean, you can't ask for more luck than that, right? So we signed up for like 15-minute time slots, and he actually spent 40 minutes with me, and it was awesome. He said he was one who told me to add more white space, and I didn't even have a real theme for my layout, and then I eventually came up with that plot and subplot, right? The prompts for the interaction of the clickable things to let people know that they should click on them. My like that X-Wing cockpit, right? That is actually a map, and the map controls were showing up for that. So I had to shut those off. I had more variation in my fonts than I probably should have. So like 3 or 4 is probably sufficient for like title, then labels, and then like analysis text under the graph. Image formatting, and the false highlighting. So, yeah, and I had talked about the false highlighting. Let me come over. I see something's in the chat. Oh, okay. So let's go on to more strategy. What would someone ask me? I presented this once before and changed it a little bit. Like, what would I do differently? One thing at the end, you'll notice, like I had a simple, in the actual contest, a simple parameter control here, but I could do that with parameter actions and a graph. So I, try to really leverage Tableau functionality. So I could switch the allegiance, right here if I wanted to, with a graph instead. I didn't really write that down as a point. Since my Viz is a timeline, I think if I did it over again, I would make it landscape instead of portrait. I would try to reduce rework by investing more time in structuring data. If you look at the data behind this thing, it's really bad, and it's very denormalized. I have stuff, triple posted in different places. The data exists in multiple data sources, the same thing, to just try to achieve what I was trying to achieve. And I just kept using the separate data sources rather than trying to tie them together. I probably should have invested some time in that. And again, put more time into the design and theme early on, because that involved a lot of rearranging then. And then there was just so much good feedback from Sam. I would try to get the expert feedback as soon as you have something presentable, because what I did, he said, how far complete do you think you are? And I said 95%, right? And then he gave his feedback, and I worked another 15 hours on it. So something to think about there for sure. So closing thoughts, a stunning Viz is an important thing, right? And when I put this out there, it's one of my most popular posts on LinkedIn of all time. I had people reaching out to me about consulting things and, applying at their company and things. So, there's not a lot of technical going on in this graph, but perception is reality. People think fancy is awesome. So it's worth doing if you're a student and you're building your portfolio. Make something as visually stunning as you can. And what does it really take to win? I don't know. I didn't even finish in the top 10. That was my goal, but I did not achieve it. But there are some links in here. If anyone wants the deck, again, you can get those links to some past people's thoughts. And Will Sutton is presenting, I think, soon about how he won last year at the Veterans Tug. I think that's coming up in the next couple weeks. And kind of my theme that I always mention is, if you want to learn, try to build something. And that definitely applies to IronViz. So that is the end of my presentation. I'm going to look at the chat here again. Okay. What is the best way to get the deck to everybody? Aaron, should they just reach out to me on LinkedIn, or, I could try to attach it in a chat here maybe, or I'm not sure.
If people want to reach out to you directly, that's fine. We can also just email it out to everybody through our Gmail account that we use.
Okay, I'll send it. I'll send it to you to be sure everyone gets it.
Okay.
All right, is all your data source, table, and dashboard all in one Tableau file? Or can I also link back to other, well, there are multiple data sources here, Maggie. So if I go back into it, so let's look at one of the sheets here, just this one. And I may not even at this point, oh shoot, that's another blank over top my actual sheet. So if I go over here, so that's a dummy thing that exists. There's one for all the locations. So that was a separate data source. Misquotes, I ended up not even using this. So that's still lingering in there. The poll from IMDb. These are my favorite quotes. And like, so I kind of double posted in whether it was one of my favorite and one of my top 12 indicators in the IMDb data source as well. And then I mentioned the all dialogue data source. So like you could download this, use these and link it up to something else, create blends, relations, joins if you want to. So, you know, it's all out there. It's on Tableau Public. You can download it. Any other questions?
I have a few. So a couple of things, Ray, a couple of things I didn't know about was renaming containers. That was a fun fact. I'm going to make sure I use that. Yeah, I didn't know you could do that. Dragging colors to your favorites. I didn't know you could do that either. I always had to like click in the blank white space and then put in my color and then click the button to add to it. And I didn't know you could just drag it in there. That's
yeah,
good.
I did that for like 4 years. So
where were you 4 years ago? No.
No, I mean, I was doing exactly like you did it up till like a year ago.
Yeah, sweet. Also, I rarely do things like those that come here and present. But one of the things I do that you do as well is adding the constant reference line as headers. I find that to be a good trick to present things pretty well. So I'm glad you and I do the same thing with that.
Oh, I forgot one more tip here. If I can do it, if I go here, I must have read right past it. Like in these sheets, in some places, because I'm black on over top of my blue and red, like the numbers were getting cut off and it didn't look good. So all I did for those guys is I created a separate version of the same calc to hide the smaller numbers. So if I go quote count, oh geez, where is it? Hide small. It's really basic, but it's just like if it's greater than the number that I know doesn't fit, show it. Otherwise, nothing, and it ends up being null and it shows nothing. Sorry to throw that in the last second, but it's
You're good.
Might be useful.
Another question I had for you, Ray, is, you know, myself and a few of us that used to work at Data Meaning back in May presented with Adam Maiko and Christian Felix on how IronViz has changed over time. And to me, it seemed like it changed more from a practical data-driven story that was being shown to a more like artistic, like fully developed story and plot line and like that you've got here. Mm-hmm. Have you seen that as well, or what do you think about the transition from, like, because if you look at the very beginning, they look nothing like they do now. Perhaps that's just the advancement of the tool.
Yeah, it could be. Like, I've only tracked it for a few years, so like I've been using Tableau. I think I'm coming up on year 6, and I've probably looked at IronViz maybe the last 3 or 4 years. So I don't have the same history that other people have in looking at it, but it does kind of make sense. And like I said, it's alluded to earlier, it's something I didn't really realize or think about, like the value of having a stunning viz and what that can do, not just, you know, from a product standpoint from Tableau, like, wow, look what this tool can do, but also from your own personal portfolio. So it's doing something from that as well. So there's probably value in like the 3 different criteria, you know, want to make sure I got it right. Let's go back to the first slide. Not first slide. Analysis, design, and storytelling. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's good the way it is. I guess that's all I have to say on it.
Okay. I got a few more quick ones before we get out of here. How many times have you submitted an IronViz entry?
This was the only time I ever did it. And I'm not doing it this year because I just don't have time. I have a lot of stuff going on this month. So when it kind of was a surprise announcement, at least to me, a couple weeks ago, I just can't do it.
Okay. So, in the beginning of Star Wars, they have the scrolling screen story.
Yes.
Do you think Tableau is capable of doing that inside of itself?
Great question. In my original the list of features, I wanted to have that in here, and I did not get to it. So it's a back pocket thing.
Yeah, it'd be awesome if that were possible, but like wrapping your head around how to even do that is so difficult.
So, I was thinking about putting like a size thing on the text and doing it as an animation with, the animation on pages. And the thing is, I was thinking the hang up is probably on the rows, because your row sizes would still be the same. So as things scroll to the top, like the spacing would get bigger, but there may be a solution I'm not thinking of. Yeah. Maybe, actually, now that I think about it, you could use even more rows. I don't know. There might be a solution.
It's for next time.
Yeah.
All right. The last question I had for you, Ray, is in your work dashboards, what you do for your job, are those more business oriented and less about telling this deep story, or do you guys show a good mix of both, or is it just straight just numbers?
Yeah, like I typically don't do what I would call more like final presentation dashboards. I do more analytical cockpits. So I am creating dashboards with a lot of cutting and slicing ability for business analysts to leverage in spotting insights and, how to interact, in my case, with providers, meaning healthcare companies.
Okay. All interesting. Those are all the questions I had. Doesn't look like we have anything else in there. We're at 3 after the hour. Thanks again, Ray, for showing up and giving us a rundown of all of this. We'll have a swag giveaway for those after the fact that are still here. Any parting words you have for us, Ray?
I'll just repeat my mantra: build to learn. If you really want to figure out the inner workings of Tableau, come up with an idea and then see if you can make it happen.
All right. Appreciate it. Next month, everybody, we have Jason Penrod from Playfair Data. So tune in for that. We'll send out RSVPs. Again, Ray, thank you. Stay warm. We'll see you later.
Take care, everyone. Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye.